From prehistoric time to today, man's progress has been marked by his ability to fashion tools and use them to his advantage. From early humans making tools from stone, man evolved and was soon trading with other men. Money evolved, and tools such as the abacus to handle complex money transactions were developed. By the end of the 19th century, machines, such as the cash register, began to appear. 100 years later, we have even better computer-driven machines which track stock, change prices, and automatically reorder. Meanwhile, the reinsurance industry has failed to embrace man's drive for progress. The reinsurance industry today would be as familiar to practitioners from the 1800s as it is to modern underwriters. An underwriter or broker from 1800 would settle nicely into today's business. That is, until now. For the reinsurance industry, pivot point changes everything. Soon it will be understood that the period before pivot point was as dark as the caveman period was before the abacus. Come and see for yourself if you don't believe. After a demonstration, you will understand what is possible.
The U.S. Geological Survey this morning said a moderate earthquake rattled the islands of Trinidad and Tobago. Struck yesterday morning. It was about a 4.9, about 16 miles north-northwest of Port of Spain. There were no reports immediately of any damage or injuries. Also on Saturday, there was a 4.1 quake in Central California. This was Sunday morning. It was Sunday morning. It was about 97 miles south of San Francisco in a small town called Tres Pinos, about 4 miles below the surface. There are no immediate reports of damage or injuries as well. There's an article in the Financial Times this morning that's significant for our industry. It says that the price for reinsurance for the beleaguered credit insurance sector is set to rocket. Industry experts have been warning, according to the FT. Credit insurers, reinsurers, and brokers have told the FT that costs are likely to rise dramatically when insurers negotiate new contracts on January 1. One senior credit insurer said, "We're expecting reinsurance costs to rocket. We will simply have to take that blow." Analysts are worried that high reinsurance costs could cause credit insurers to reduce significantly the cover that they offer to suppliers in the UK and the US against the risk of the purchasers going bust. Amlin has already withdrawn its credit insurance product, which commanded about 4% of the UK market. As the result of companies collapsing and so defaulting on payments to their suppliers increases, credit insurers are likely to find that not only will reinsurance costs rise, but they will lose reinsurance entirely from large parts of their business. Euler Hermes, one of the world's biggest credit insurers, was forced to issue a global profit warning ahead of expected claims from suppliers to Woolworths. Expectations for increased credit reinsurance costs come as reinsurance prices are set to rise in many of the areas of the market, beginning with the 1/1 renewals. We reported 2 weeks ago about Carville beginning to wind down. We see some more evidence today. A specialist treaty reinsurance broking team has left RK Carville to join rival London broker Tysers. Earlier this month, Carville announced it was discontinuing its treaty reinsurance business in April. Now we see Robin Barker-Hallow and Andrew Smallshaw will join Tysers as directors, while David Edwards has been named account managers at Tysers P&C division. All three worked at Carville and specialize in treaty reinsurance, London market facilities, and binding authorities. In the Amazon, a Rhode Island-sized expanse of what was pristine rainforest is crisscrossed with oil wells and pipeline grids built by Texaco a generation ago. And for the past 15 years, a class action lawsuit has been winding its way through Ecuadorian courts on behalf of about 125,000 people who drink, bathe, fish, and wash in the tainted headwaters of the Amazon River. Now, a single judge is expected to rule on the case in 2009. Statements from a court-appointed expert suggest Chevron, which bought Texaco in 2001, will be held responsible for the many oil spills and dumping of toxic wastewater. If Chevron loses, it could be ordered to pay up to $27.3 billion U.S. in damages, although an appeal will be likely. The expert, a geological engineer, Richard Cabrera, largely accepts plaintiffs' claims that Texaco left a mess when it departed Ecuador in the early 90s. He is recommending damages based partly on his calculation of 1,401 pollution-caused cancer deaths. Chevron does not deny the presence of pollution, and they do not deny that there were impacts. But Chevron contends a 1998 agreement that Texaco signed with Ecuador after spending $40 million in remediation absolves it of any legal responsibility. It says, and few will dispute this, that its former partner, the state oil company Petroecuador, continued to pollute the area after Texaco departed. Pipelines across the area connected the wells to the 313-mile trans-Ecuadorian pipeline built by Texaco to carry crude oil to the Pacific. In the early days of the oil bonanza, Ecuador, which is an OPEC member, encouraged people to settle in the oil area by offering free homesteads. But the government provided hardly any services. None of the area's drinking water is treated. By the time Texaco departed, the consortium it had led had extracted nearly 1.5 billion barrels of oil from the area. In the meantime, Ecuadorian oil field workers slathered the crude on their legs, believing it cured rheumatism. Some coated their scalps because American supervisors told them that crude oil warded off baldness. And many people ended up drinking wastewater tainted into the water aquifer system and ingesting raw crude oil. The plaintiffs say that Texaco saved $8 to $10 a barrel by dumping some 18 billion gallons of the wastewater into waste pits instead of re-injecting it back into the ground. According to the brief filed in the court in Ecuador, Texaco themselves said it was the cheapest production in Latin America. We'll keep our eyes on that. That would be a whale of a payment if Chevron is forced to pay that. Toyota Motor Corporation this morning slashed its earnings forecast, projecting that it would report its first annual operating loss for the fiscal year through March since it began reporting results back in 1941. Battered by falling demand from consumers around the world and a strengthening yen, Toyota and other Japanese car makers have been reducing earnings outlooks and cutting workers. According to Toyota President Katsuaki Watanabe, the change that has hit the world economy is of a critical stage that comes once in 100 years. He said that the drop in vehicle sales over last month was far faster, far wider, and deeper than expected. Toyota forecast an operating loss of about 150 billion yen or 1.6 billion US for the fiscal year ending in March of 2009. Toyota has never reported an operating loss since it began disclosing such figures in 1941, but the company did have an operating loss in unofficial calculations in the year ending March of 1938, a year after the company was founded. Well, the road to the TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, is now well trodden. We have a new group that's going to be in line soon. Some of the nation's biggest real estate property developers are asking the government for assistance as a record amount of commercial real estate debt comes due. This is according to the Wall Street Journal today. The development industry is reportedly asking to be included in a new $200 billion loan program initially created by the government to assist the market for student loans and credit card debt. The real estate development industry is warning that thousands of office complexes, hotels, shopping centers, and other commercial buildings are headed for defaults owing to some $530 million of commercial mortgages that will be coming due for refinancing in the next 3 years. The industry says that this poses another major threat to the global financial system, which is already severely weakened. In a recent letter to the Treasury Secretary, Henry Paulson, signed by a dozen real estate trade groups, the scenario was described as grim. Quote, right now, we believe there is insufficient systemic capacity to refinance expiring, performing commercial real estate loans. For many borrowers, credit simply is not available.